Chapter 10 of Zhang Henshui's Cause of Crying and Laughing. A wolf climbs a dragon and is greedy for money, and turns his tongue around. An orchid hides a phoenix to show off her wealth and accumulate shemming. But it was said that Shen Sangshuan met a rich friend on the road, and they went to the hotel together and started eating and drinking. It turned out that the man's name was Huang Hasheng, and he was also a Sangxianzi player. Because the girl he was following was married to a division commander as his concubine, he asked the girl to intercede and become an adjutant in front of the division commander. Because he was a little clever, he kept buying things with his concubine and made a lot of money, which made him a small fortune. At that time, Huang Hasheng drank a few more glasses of wine, and couldn't help but boast about his proud things. Shen Sangshuan heard this in his heart, and did not want to lose face, so he said, "Although I am not as good as yours, I can still make ends meet. My niece, whom you have also seen, has now found a rich master. Our whole family is now dependent on her." Then he explained the general situation. Because he said again, "If you have time, you can come to our place and have a look." Huang Hasheng also smiled and said, "Friends are happy to be friends, so I have to go and have a look." The two of them were already drunk as they talked. Full. Huang Hasheng didn't wait for Shen Sangshuan to be humble. He took out a wallet from his body and took out a large roll of banknotes. He took out a 10 yuan note from the banknote and gave it to the waiter to pay for the food and drink. After getting the change, he casually paid a tip of 1 yuan, and then walked out of the door without hesitation. When I saw a rickshaw parked on the side of the road, I stepped on it and drove away. Shen Sangshuan looked at it, nodded, and sighed again. When I got home, I went straight to the room. Seeing Aunt Shen, she asked, "Sister-in-law, have you guessed who the girl from the Guan family who came to our house is? She is the daughter of the old man Guan, the master of the Tianqiu teaching. I will be scared when I see that old man on the street. Why are you seducing his daughter to your home? Some people say that this old man is a gangster. Just look at it. One day, he will take sanitary pills. I don't know. The old man who is practicing. Why are you scolding me so?" "Well," Shen Sangshuan said, "who doesn't know anyone in Tianqiu? You don't know how disgusting this old man is. Come on, give me a good lesson. Look, this is what Fan means. Everyone has their own affairs, so why should he bother us? What the hell is he?" The aunt said, "Where did you pour these yellow soups? You opened your mouth and cursed people. The person named Guan offended you, and the person named Fan didn't offend you. So why did you drag the person named Fan?" Shen Sangshuan said, "That's right. The man surnamed Fan gave you a few $100s before he left. You have never seen this before, and you treat him like a Buddha. How dare you offend him? Just give him a few small coins and sell your mother's heart. It's really not worth it. Look at how rich brother Huang Hasheng is now. He is just Yakin's master, and Feng Zai was promoted to adjutant when Yakin became his wife. What kind of affection do I have for her? But what have I gained? Just spend a few coins." Aunt Shen said, "You spend money every day, but you still come back to nag me. I'm not a wife, so where can I find an adjutant to do it for you? You're too drunk to look like a human being. You can just lie on the kang and find an adjutant to do it for you." Aunt Shen didn't bother to pay attention to him, and went to the kitchen. Shen Sangshuan was also very drunk, so he went into the room and fell down on the kang. The next day, Shen Sangshuan remembered that he had asked Huang Hasheng to come today, so he waited at home and never went out. At around 11 o'clock in the morning, I heard the sound of a car outside the door, followed by someone knocking on the door. Shen Sangshuan had two friends who drove cars for others, so he was wondering if they were here. He walked all the way to open the door, and said, "You have something to do. Why do you want to imitate me, and go around trying to knock on doors?" He opened the door with his hand and saw Huang Hasheng stepping out of the car, waving a fan in his hand. He reached out and patted Shen Sangshuan on the shoulder, and said, "You are still so frugal. Why don't you use a servant and open the door yourself?" Shen Sangshuan thought to himself, "How can I say that I have made a fortune? But it is useless. Where did the word frugal come from?" With this thought in mind, I agreed to him casually. Inviting Huang Hasheng into the room, he was busy making tea and getting cigarettes. Huang Hasheng lifted the white gauze on the glass with his hand, looked out the window, and said, "It's a small house, but it's very neatly kept. The girl, who was 16 or 17 years old, had her hair cut, wore leather shoes, and a short white gauze cheongsam, only a little longer than her knees, revealing a large section of her legs. Wearing white socks, she had a school bag tucked under her waist. Yin turned around and asked, "Old Zuan, where did this female student come from in your family?" Shen Sangshuan said, "Master Huang, didn't I tell you yesterday? This is my niece, Huang." He laughed, said, "Hey, it's her. She's so fashionable, and she's getting more and more beautiful as she grows up. With her looks, she's bound to become famous if she goes to sing Dagushu. But again, I'd like to find a master as soon as possible. It's good to have food and drink, and the whole family can feel at ease." Shen Sangshuan looked out the window, and then said in a low voice, "Are you at ease? We're going through the ledger on a donkey. We'll see. When a young master goes out to study, how much money can the family give him? In the first 2 months, he was allowed to fiddle around, find some money, and then he can settle down in this family. I guess it won't work after a month. Even if it works, it's just a benefit to her and her mother. What benefit can I get? When the boy left, he left me no money, and I didn't. I know, but my sister-in-law only gives me more than 100 coppers every day. Nowadays, coppers are extremely worthless. It's only 3 or 4 cents. Why did you let me do this? I have been looking for hundreds of dollars a day. Isn't it the same now? According to me, the girl now has 2 pieces of clothing. Take this opportunity to find a restaurant to show off. Maybe by then she will become famous. No matter what, you can make 3 or 2 yuan a day, don't you think?" Huang Hesheng said with a smile, "According to your calculation, you are right. Why is she willing to sing songs and serve people?" Shen Sangshuan said, "Being a female student is just nonsense. I said that boy named Fan is just doing it. There are few female students who can study like men. Can you do great things? I don't think you can do anything. After studying for 3 days, I will talk about equality and freedom first." At this point, he lowered his voice and said, "My niece has been naughty since she was a child. I will talk about equality and freedom later. It would be weird if she could be with someone named Fan again." Huang Hesheng was about to answer the call when he heard Aunt Shen shouting from the north room, "Third brother, there is a car parked at our door. Who is here?" Huang Hesheng answered outside the room, "Sister-in-law of the Shen family. It's me. I haven't looked at you yet." The man from far away bowed several times and said, "We have lived next to each other. Lao Zuan, and I have been friends for many years. Do you still recognize me?" Aunt Shen stood at the door of the north room, stunned. "Although I feel familiar, I can't remember whether his surname is Zhang or Li." While she was stunned, Shen Sangshuan rushed out and said, "Sister-in-law, why can't you remember Mr. Huang? He is rich now and has become an adjutant. There are many cars in their yamen. As long as you are an official, you can take the public car. The car at the door is Mr. Huang's. Did you see that it's so big that it won't be too crowded for 10 people? What's your teacher's last name again?" "Yes." Huang Hesheng said it was Sheng. Shen Sangshuan said, "That's right. It's the famous Lord Sheng. Miss Yakin is now Lord Sheng's second wife. Although she is his second wife, Lord Sheng really likes her, many times better than the lady he married. Otherwise, how can I promote Mr. Huang to the position of adjutant?" Huang Hesheng wanted to tell the general situation first because Aunt Shen didn't know his recent background. Now Shen Sangshuan came out to introduce him. He said everything he had never told him before, so there was no need to say anything more. At this time, Aunt Shen also remembered that her neighbors had indeed lived in the past, so she smiled and said, "It's a rare thing that we can still see our old neighbors. Please come and sit in the north room." Shen Sangshuan eagerly said, and took the Huang Hesheng's hand, guided him towards the north room. Aunt Shen said she was an old neighbor, so she simply asked Feng Shi to come out and meet her. Huang Hesheng took a closer look at Feng Shi and thought that the child was so well groomed that he was indeed much more handsome than when he was a child. No wonder, a phoenix really emerged from the old crow's nest. We sat and chatted for a while, then left and went out. Shen Sangshuan rushed forward to open the door. Huang Hesheng saw that Aunt Shen was in the house and did not come out, so he held onto Shen Sangshuan's hand and said, "Are those things you said to me first in your own house true?" Shen Sangshuan heard it suddenly and didn't understand his intention, but just looked at Huang Hesheng's face. "Huang," he said, "don't you understand what I said? It's what you complained to me about. Shen Sangshuan suddenly woke up and said, yes, I understand. Mr. Huang, let's see if there is any way to promote him as a younger brother. He will never forget it for the rest of his life. Huang Hasheng held his hand, shook it a few times, and said with a smile, by chance, there may be a chance. Just take it. After that, Huang Hasheng got in the car and go. It turned out that the army led by Commander Shang, whom Huang Hasheng followed, was stationed in the western suburbs of Beijing. His mansion is located in the city, and some people do business there. This adjutant, Huang Hasheng, was an adjutant working in the mansion. He returned to the mansion at that time, and Master Shang happened to call him for something. He put down his hat and fan, straightened his clothes, and then went to the upper room to see Master Shang. Master Shang said, I've been looking for you for a long time, but I didn't see you. When you arrived, Huang Hasheng didn't wait for him to finish the question, and he laughed and said, the person that Master ordered to look for last time was found today. I went out today just for this. Mr. Shang said, Dashui Liu has very high standards. He can't look down on people who are similar to him. Huang, he said, this guy is good. He looks great. No need to mention it. At first she was a drummer and now she is studying again, which shows that she is more civilized. Just mentioning that temperament is not easy to find nowadays. If you don't have a few strengths, you won't dare to tell your teacher. Master Shang twisted the water chestnut beard on his lips twice, and said with a smile, there is no basis for what I say. I have to look at the person first. Huang Hasheng said, it's easy. This man's third uncle and Hasheng are best friends. As long as Hasheng goes to talk to him, he will obey his orders. But I wonder where the teacher wants to see her. Master Shang said, of course, call her to my home. Am I still looking for a place to wait for her, just for this? Huang Hasheng said yes twice. He was thinking, nowadays, she is also a good-natured woman. It is not easy to ask someone to send her to see her. While thinking about it, she peeked at Master Shang's face and saw that his face was normal. Then he smiled and said, if there is an order from my wife to come to the mansion to have fun, she will definitely come. It turns out that the teacher's main wife is now from her hometown, and the servant's wife refers to Yakin. Teacher Shang said, that doesn't matter. As long as she is willing to come, let the wife accompany me, and play with us for a while. I will. You can take a closer look. As he spoke, the tip of his rhombus-shaped beard moved upward with a smile, revealing two bright gold teeth in his mouth. When Huang Hasheng saw that Shang Feng had already agreed, it was easy to start the matter, so he made an appointment to pick him up tomorrow afternoon. That night, he sent someone to call Shen Sangshuan to Shanghai and led him to his bedroom to talk. After interviewing for an hour, Shen Sangshuan laughed so hard that he almost rolled out of the room. Since Huang Hasheng also wanted to go out, he let him ride in his car and dropped him off at his door. Shen Sangshuan got out of the car and was a little unhappy when he saw that the door of his house was ajar. After pushing the door open and going in, he shouted in the yard, sister-in-law, if you didn't open the door, you didn't see me. I came back by car. Today I opened my eyes, tasted something new, and took a car. Adjutant Huang is waiting for me. We're not bad. It's really rare for him to know us when he's so rich. Aunt Shen said, don't show off, just go back to boudoir. If someone treats you to a restaurant and takes a bus, you can't wait to praise him, God. If he gives you buyer 80, you don't have me, so you have to treat him as Lao Tzu. Shen Sangshuan said, buyer 80, that's nothing. Maybe you can help me with buyer 80. I don't care whether you and your wife are happy with their kindness, but I have to tell them. This is Mr. Shang's wife, who wants to take a look at the little sisters and pick up Feng Shi. I went to his house to play. After 2 o'clock tomorrow, I sent 2 guards to pick me up. Although I was born in the same industry, you probably don't know how old the division commander is. Comparing the officials of the former Qing dynasty, he must be the top one. It would be very embarrassing if he didn't go. Don't talk nonsense. We didn't have any contact with Yakin before. Now that she has become a rich wife, she will get along with us. I don't believe it. Shen Sangshuan said, that's what I said, but today, Adjutant Huang, I was specially invited to tell you this. You can't lie at all. It's rare for Mrs. Shang to just think of us, so I would be sorry if I didn't go. Qin may not remember us, but Huang Hasheng told her and she remembered us. Shen Sangshuan said, sister-in-law, don't name people like this. We are used to calling them behind our backs. We may accidentally call them out in front of us in the future. If someone is rich and powerful, it would be inconvenient to be afraid of not being able to have friendship with someone and offending them. Will Fengxi still go tomorrow? Aunt Shen said. I don't know if your words are reliable or not. If someone really sent a car to pick her up, then it would be impossible not to go. Otherwise, people will really say that we don't know how to commend ourselves. Shen Sangshuan was overjoyed because he said, you are a well-informed person, so of course you will let her go. But our niece is a bit timid. They were talking in the room outside, and Feng Shi was in the room. I have heard enough, he said. Don't look down on people like that. You haven't been to the places I have been to. Even though Yakan has become a wife, she is still the same old person. What am I afraid of? Shen Sangshuan said, as long as you can go, that's fine. I won't gamble with you. Shen Sangshuan was afraid that he might get stuck in his words, so after saying this, he went back to his room. The next day, Shen Sangshuan got up early, but he got up early and had nothing to do. He took a broom and swept the floor in the yard. Aunt Shen got up, opened the door, and said with a smile, hey, our family is going to get rich. Uncle will get up so early and clean the yard for me. Shen Sangshuan smiled and said, I don't know what happened. I woke up at dawn and couldn't sleep. I had nothing to do in the morning. It would be better to sweep the yard than wait around. Besides, you have a small family, and I only eat and drink. Feng Shi is even more like a student, inside and outside. You have to take care of it all by yourself, and I should give you and my wife some help. After saying that, he pointed to Feng Shi's room and said softly, is she up? Does she agree to go to Mrs. Shang's place? If she doesn't go, you have to talk to her a little bit. Now that we are trying to be decent people, we should also have a few good relatives and friends. You don't know anything. Do you think it's right to say that I am a brother? Aunt Shen smiled and said, you are doing well today. You are willing to do things, and your words are listened to. Shen Sangshuan smiled and said, a person cannot be confused all his life, and one day he will understand. For example, Mr. Shang's wife was not so open-minded when she sang Dagushu, but now that she has become Mr. Shang's wife, even old and poor neighbors like us have remembered it. After all, has our niece decided to go? Aunt Shen said, there is no decision or no decision. When the car comes, just let her go. Shen Sangshuan said, if we can't let her go, we have to be willing to go by herself. Aunt Shen said, oh, weirdly poor. What are you always talking about? When Shen Sangshuan saw his sister-in-law saying this, he felt embarrassed to say it again. After a while, Feng Shi also got up. She brought a basin of water from the kitchen and was about to go to the north room when Shen Sangshuan said, my niece, you are angry early today. Feng Shi opened her mouth and said, what are you doing? I know you have been angry all day. Good morning. I'll hurt you when we meet you. Shen Sangshuan walked out of the room and said with a smile, I'm really not hurting you. Look, is the yard clean today? Feng Shi smiled slightly and said, it's clean. Shen Sangshuan wandered under the locust tree in the yard for a while, waiting for Feng Shi to come out. After a long while, I turned around to the locust tree, and with a splash, a basin of washing water came from behind me, and a blue bamboo cloth coat was mostly wet. Feng Shi stood at the door of the room, holding an empty wash basin in her hand, shouting oops repeatedly. Shen Sangshuan said, fortunately, the upper body was not splashed. This coat needs to be washed anyway. Feng Shi saw that he was not angry, and said with a smile, I splashed water back and forth, and it was always like this. Standing at the door, looking at the locust tree. It's okay to be together under the tree, but I didn't know you would be standing here today. Take it off, and let me wash it for you. Shen Sangshuan said, I'm not waiting to put it on. What am I busy with? Didn't I hear you say that you want to go to Master Shang's house? Feng Shi said, you came back and asked us to go. How can you say that? You heard me say it. Shen Sangshuan said, I brought the news, but it's up to you whether you go or not. I heard you are going, right? You should also come and go at your sister's house. In the future. Feng Shi said, oh, you got wet? Go and change your clothes quickly. Why stand here and talk nonsense? Shen Sangshuan asked Feng Shi to take a sip of tea. He had nothing to say and had to go back to his room and change his clothes. When she changed her clothes and came out again, Feng Shi had already entered the room. So he pretended to smoke and look for a fire, walked to the north room, and asked through the door, "Niece, do you want me to call Adjutant Huang?" Feng Shi came out and said, "Adjutant Huang, yes? What do you need to talk about?" Shen Sangshuan said with a smile, "Why did you forget? Aren't you going to Sheng's house?" Feng Shi said, "Why don't you go?" He opened the door and rolled up. After turning around, he went into the room. Shen Sangshuan saw her body suddenly fall away, and the short hair on her head twirled, as if she had gone in with her neck stiffened. His heart skipped a beat. He didn't dare to comfort her, and if he didn't, he was afraid that things would break up. "Stand in the middle of the room and just smoke." After a long while he said, "I didn't dare to bother you. I just said one thing, and you got angry." Feng Shi said, "I didn't get up in the morning, and I heard you asking about your mother. You want to curry favor with the rich man. Let me give you. You're going to be the lead, right? According to what you said, what do you think if I don't go?" Shen Sangshuan didn't dare to say anything and slipped into his room. When it was time to have lunch, Shen Sangshuan saw that Feng Shi's face was as normal as usual, and then calmly said to Aunt Shen, "If you want to go out in the afternoon, you can go out. I'll stay at home to take care of the house for the day." Aunt Shen was eating her food and just shook her head at him. Shen Sangshuan said, "Then Mrs. Sheng only said that the eldest girl should go, otherwise, you can also go with her. But then again, in the future, we will become familiar with each other, and we can naturally come and go as we please." He spoke, holding his hands, holding a bowl with chopsticks in his hand. He stretched his chin straight to the center of the bowl and looked at Feng Shi, who was sitting opposite. Feng Shi ignored her and just ate her food. Shen Sangshuan picked up the rice with his chopsticks and smiled slightly. Aunt Shen looked at it and ignored it. Shen Sangshuan could only laugh and said, "I still have such a temper. If someone has something to do, I am just anxious with them. I should decide whether the eldest girl will go or not. After a while, their car will also come. But according to me, it doesn't matter if you go for a while, but you have to go there for the sake of face. It won't be long, at least 1 o'clock." Speaking of this, Feng Shi, having finished his meal first, he put down his bowl and went in first. Shen Sangshuan said softly, "Sister-in-law, please don't let her go." Aunt Shen said, "You are so poor." After saying that, she pressed the chopsticks with a snap and put the bowl on the table with her left hand, pushed towards the middle again. Although she didn't say anything, she seemed to be unhappy, which was fully expressed with these presses. Shen Sangshuan laughed to himself and said, "I mean well. If you don't want me to say it, I won't say it." He only said this and just kept his head down while eating. Normally, Shen Sangshuan would go out as soon as he put down his rice bowl. Today, after eating, he just held a cigarette and strolled in the yard. At 2 o'clock, there was a car noise at the door, and his heart skipped a beat. When he went out and opened the door, he saw that it was the car sent by Shang Jai. 2 armed soldiers with box cannons jumped out of the car first. Shen Sangshuan smiled and nodded. "Aren't you sent by Adjutant Huang to pick up Miss Shen? She is my niece. Adjutant Huang and I are best friends." So he invited the 2 soldiers to his. After staying in the room, she quietly walked to the north room and said to Aunt Shen, "What should I do? The car is here." Aunt Shen said, "Your niece is having trouble, and she refuses to go." Shen Sangshuan, when he heard this, he panicked and said, "No, that can't be done." "So what?" Shen Sangshuan frowned, his neck softened, his head tilted to his shoulders, and he smiled at Aunt Shen. "Why do you have to embarrass me? Just tell her to go." 2 soldiers were staying in my house. They both had guys on them. I was really scared. When he spoke, he showed that pitiful look and bowed to Aunt Shen several times. Aunt Shen smiled and said, "I see you are really sweating because of this today." When Shen Sangshuan was still going to say something, he saw Feng Shi changing her clothes and shoes and coming out, just as she was about to go out. Shen Sangshuan asked, "Would you like to let those 2 soldiers drink a bowl of water?" Feng Shi said, "First you are afraid that I won't go, but when I go, you have to be polite to others." She smiled and ran outside, saying in succession, "Drive, drive, let's leave now." He was so busy walking that he forgot to step over the threshold with his back foot. With a thud, a frog fell and rolled over. He couldn't care less, got up, and ran towards his house, bowing to the 2 soldiers repeatedly. Said, "Excuse me for waiting. My niece is coming out." The 2 guards walked out and saw Feng Shi wearing long clothes and leather shoes, and guessed that he was the one who was going to pick him up. Then they all stepped forward and raised their hands in a military salute with Feng Shi. Feng Shi had always been frightened when she saw the soldiers. Unexpectedly, when she saw the soldiers today, she looked so grand. Being saluted by them, she couldn't help but feel happy. 2 soldiers led the way. As soon as she stepped out of the gate, a soldier stepped forward and opened the car door for her. Feng Shi got into the car. There was a soldier standing on both sides of the car, so he drove towards Shanghai at full speed. Feng Shi sat in the car and couldn't help but look back and forth, looking around. Pedestrians on the road were very attentive to this car. I thought about what they meant. Seeing me riding in a car with guards, how could you not guess that I was a member of a wealthy family? When the car arrived at Shang's house, one of the 2 guards rushed in to report the news, and the other opened the door. Feng Shi got out of the car and saw 2 old ladies who were dressed more neatly. They called out Miss Shen with a smile, then knelt down to say hello, and one of them said, "Please do it. Our wives are waiting. Come on." Feng Shi didn't know how to reply, so she just snorted in response. The old lady took her along the corridor and through 2 splendid courtyards. When she reached the 3rd entrance, she saw a young woman covered in robes, on the high steps, supporting a girl of 12 or 13 years old, standing there like a willow in the wind. But he smiled and nodded slightly. That was none other than Yakin, who used to sing Dagushu and is now the teacher's wife. I remember that back then, she was very strong and could ride a bicycle and run around Chengnan Park. But now she has become so delicate that she has to hold on to someone to stand. She looked at Yakin here, and Yakin looked at her there. Yakin always thought that Fengxi was still the same kind of small family member as before, and today she only wore a red and green gown. Now, I can see that she looks very civilized. Although she is not very gorgeous, she is completely different from before. She didn't wait for Feng Shi to come forward and immediately left. The girl she was supporting came forward, held Feng Shi's hand and said, "Sister, how are you? I didn't expect that we would meet here today. Are you fine now?" After saying this, she held Feng Shi's hand and still looked at her body. She smiled and said, "I can't believe it. No wonder Adjutant Huang said you were fine." Feng Shi just smiled, not knowing what her destiny was, so it was difficult to agree to her words. She held Feng Shi's hand and walked all the way into the house. Feng Shi walked in and saw that the main room was like a palace. The wooden furniture inside was similar to what was seen in the paintings. The antiques and calligraphy and paintings displayed everywhere were hard to name. Just look at the clock placed on the side of the marble and red sandalwood king in the middle. It was as tall as a person. The second thing that made people feel was the carpet under their feet. They didn't know how thick it was. It felt like walking on the bed. It was just soft. At this time, an old woman was at the right door. She rolled up the door curtain and let Yakin take Feng Shi in. After passing through a room, this was Yakin's bedroom. Facing them was a large copper bed with a pearl curtain hanging down. The bedding on the bed was like a glass cabinet in a silk shop. Without looking at other furnishings, they felt dazzled. Yakin said, "Big sister, I don't consider you a stranger, so I asked you to come to my room. It's not easy for us to meet, so please don't leave. Come and have dinner with me, and then we can talk. I can open my mouth to let you listen, or turn on the radio for you to listen. Our radio is different from the usual ones. You can hear foreign theaters singing. You see, this is very fresh." Then she pointed behind the bed and said, "Look, isn't that a small door? That's the bathing room." Then she pulled Fengxi's hand and pushed the door open for her to look inside. The inside was like white jade, and it was all made of white tiles. Fengxi was embarrassed to look closely, so she just stretched her head to look, and then retreated. Yakin smiled and said, "After dinner, you can take a bath here before leaving." She let Yakin finish her hospitality before letting her sit on a purple leather sofa. On the small tea table opposite, there was a small electric fan. An old maid prepared tea and was about to turn on the fan when Yakin said, "Don't be in a hurry. Bring some perfume." The maid brought some perfume. Yakin took it, opened the plug, and sprinkled it all over the room, and then asked the maid to turn on the fan. The blades moved, and the whole room was filled with fragrance. Before Fengxi came, she thought to herself that although Yakin was the teacher's concubine, it was not bad for her to meet her. Even talking to her was not much different. Now, after this comparison, she realized that her knowledge was not broad. When Yakin talked, our teacher was good and our teacher was bad, so it was not easy to say anything. Just listen to what she said. While they were talking here, the teacher, Shang, had already secretly watched them from behind a green gauze screen in the next room. He felt that his wife Ru was like gold compared to Fengxi. She did not need cosmetics, pearls, and jade to compliment her, and naturally had a natural charm. It's a pity that I have already said this to General Liu, otherwise I would have to take this beauty for myself. It turns out that General Liu is the brother of Marshal Liu. Now he is the commander of the reserve army and the director of the Beijing office. He is the soul of Marshal Liu. When Fengxi came, General Liu would come to the home of Commander Shang for a short visit. Because he was very bored, he wanted to find two people to play cards at Shang's house to have fun. After chatting for a while, Master Shang said with a smile, "I heard that the marshal wanted to find a wife in Beijing, so I asked someone to visit her. Today, she came. She is the sister of our concubine. I don't know what she is like, so let me go and take a look first." General Liu smiled and said, "I know about our second son. Whether he likes this person or not, let me take a test first. That would be good. If I say yes, at least there is a high probability that he will be happy. Otherwise, you send her to any place randomly, but you won't get any benefit, and you will hit a snag first. So what's the point?" Master Shang thought it made sense, so he agreed to go in first and call Fengxi out to meet everyone. When General Liu heard this, he agreed very much. He asked Master Shang to go upstairs first, and he waited in the living room. Unexpectedly, after waiting for most of the day, Master Shang still didn't come out. He was very familiar with the Shang family, and he was a little impatient waiting, so he went upstairs. He called out to Master Shang, Tyron, why don't you come out after you go in?" Master Shang quickly left the green gauze screen and walked to the door to greet him. Yin smiled and said, "It's true that she is wrong, but she seems to be a little too young." "Why do you think she is too young? Please come out and see me." Master Shang shook his hands again and said, Don't shout. Whether you can ask her to come out and see me, I dare not force this decision. I have to ask our Prime Minister." So he let General Liu go to the inner living room, and then ordered the servant to ask the concubine to come out. As soon as Yakin entered the door, Master Shang smiled and said, "I saw her. You said that she also sang drum books before, but I don't believe it. Look at her gentle appearance. She really looks like a..." Yakin didn't wait for him to finish, and quickly glared and said, "Do you think this is a good thing? Who doesn't want to be a young lady when they are born? There is nothing you can do if you are born in the wrong place. People who sing drum books are also raised by their parents. When they sing drum books on stage, they still have to wear clothes and eat when they get off the stage. Do you think that if you sing drum books, you will have a line of words on your face that says you are an inferior person, and hang the sign everywhere? You said she is gentle and polite, not like a drum singer. I don't know what bad looks other drum singers have." Master Shang sat on the sofa, raised his feet, clapped his hands, leaned back and laughed. "This is incredible." This sentence aroused our wife's anger. "I said she doesn't look like a drum singer, not that you look like that. In front of you, I say that your sisters are good. You also have decent things to do. Why are you so distant?" After saying that, he laughed again. Yakin said, "Don't laugh. Tell me what's the matter quickly. There are guests in the house." The master laughed and said, "It's because of her that I invited you here. Can you invite her out and we can talk about it?" Yakin whispered, "Don't be silly. She has a boyfriend, although she hasn't married yet. She is now living in the man's family. After all, she is a young lady who has not yet married into the family. If you treat her as..." Master Shang said, "They are your sisters, and they are also my sisters-in-law. Let them see this useless old brother-in-law. I treat her as a relative. Isn't it okay?" He said this with a loud voice, laughed, and walked straight into the room. General Liu was anxious to see who was who, so he followed closely. But when the two of them entered the room, there was no one in the room. General Liu got anxious first, and shouted, "Where are the guests? Where are the guests?" To know whether Fengxi can escape from this embroidered cage, we will find out next time. Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.